Welcome back to episode 158 of Tall Boy Radio. And we've got another doozy for you this week. We've got another couple of guests. We're joined by the boys from Illinois. But before we get to them, let's get to a guy who's a big fan of a team from Illinois. Gaz, let's find out if he's looking forward to this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to this. Love having the guys on. I'm not sure. I'm a massive fan of how my team are getting on at the moment. Although I'm looking forward to a really decent draft. I'll be honest with you. I think we're going to sort of slide down, aren't we? I think we're going to give up the number one. So just so we can get various other players in. But yeah, we'll see where this is going. Looking forward to it.
Indeed. And like I said, we're joined by the boys from Illinois, from glorious Peoria, two greats from the United States. It's Brad and Ryan of the Pubtime podcast. How are you doing, guys?
Pretty good. That might be the best introduction I've ever received.
Yeah, we might have to cut that out of there and use it. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's not been a very productive day at work.
So basically,
awesome.
what you're saying is you've just been sitting there watching sport, just spitting rhymes. That's what you've been doing. Then is that what you were?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, nice. Yeah,
it's been mainly horse racing today, and I hate horse racing. So
yeah,
how are you
got
guys?
to be? That's got to be tough being with your job revolving around sports now. Do you ever fear that it's going to sort of ruin your fandom a little bit because it's going to feel like work to watch sports here after a while to kind of get old, maybe?
Well, it hasn't yet. I will say this. I love Mondays. People say they don't like Mondays. I love my Mondays at work because it follows the NFL. So I get to watch a lot of American football, look into a lot of like NFL results and spend my whole day talking about American football. So it hasn't got tired yet. And now when I get in and I say to the wife, I need to watch the sports tonight because you never know. I could be looking at this tomorrow.
That's awesome. It's a perfect built-in excuse. I love it.
Exactly. So we said tonight, well, we bandied around a couple of ideas, didn't we? And we settled on secret societies. And we said we're going to do, well, you guys do you want to tell us about the 5 for 5 you do on your podcast? I'm sure our folks are familiar with you guys now. It's the third time you've been on, but tell us a little bit about your podcast and how it all works.
A lot of times it's us arguing for weeks, settling on a topic, and then spending about 25 minutes arguing on the 5 things the other person chose. Usually.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's things agreed upon, but
Yeah, and that's what's been fun is the 5 for 5 has sort of evolved a little bit over time. It was always like a top list, like top 5 this, top 5 that. But there have been times we've used it as a bottom 5, or maybe just 5 things that you like about something in no particular order. And early on, we realized we had a lot of duplicates between the two of us for different things, and so we've really tried to make a point as we've evolved to avoid that. And what we've done a pretty good job of it, even with, we usually don't disclose what our answers are to each other before we do it live. And I think that we both sort of assume what direction the other one might go and try to steer clear. And we've had some success, surprisingly, doing that without, planning on it. But yeah, I mean, we, do our 5 for 5 almost every episode. We try to make it something that's relates to the topic we're discussing. And that's sometimes that's more difficult than others, but it is sort of an easy thing to help us settle on a topic sometimes. And more often than not, that 5 for 5 turns into a half hour, 45 minutes long because we go down some rabbit hole about something.
That's the way. Well, I was chatting to Ryan yesterday. That's the one thing I said. We'll start off. We're going to do a 5 for 5 about secret societies. 5 interesting facts. 5 things you want to say. 5 things you want to share. 5. It could even be 5 questions you want to ask. So we're keeping it a really broad topic here. So yeah, it could end up being the entire episode. This 5 for 5, which would be good because that'll just about pan out for my research.
Yeah, I spent most of my morning doing a lot of secret society researches because I wanted to put something decent together, and I tried to go a little off the beaten path. So I'm curious to see where this goes.
Oh, cool. That sounds like a guy who's putting himself forward to go first.
yeah.
I mean, I guess I can't.
Jump up there.
Don't mind. Do we want to go one at a time around the room, or are you wanting me to go through all 5? How do you want to do it?
So yeah, dude, we'll go one at a time, and we'll let you go first.
Sounds good. So the first one I came up with was a very basic one, but it's just I find it interesting with everything that's going on, and that's in relation to the Illuminati, right? And the fact that Jay-Z, Beyonce, and Kanye West are allegedly members of the Illuminati, which honestly, like if people want to say that the Illuminati is this big, scary, powerful thing, the second you tell me that those three people are involved, specifically Kanye, I think I am no longer living in fear of the Illuminati.
I don't know, dude. I think he's the one person you should definitely be afraid of. He's batshit crazy.
Yeah, a little bit of a loose
out of
loose
the
cannon.
three, out of
Yeah.
the three, he definitely takes it.
It's strange because I'd got the Illuminati on my list. Probably like a couple of other people maybe, but I got the Illuminati on my list. And it's strange because it's incredible how the amount of secret societies we might go down this route a bit later, but sort of started off with religion or the church, and then they've sort of morphed into business, and obviously this the Illuminati is the eye of providence in it. It's the sort of triangular eye, and it is on the American $1 bill, and there's all sorts of conspiracies about that they sort of help to put people in government and this, that, and the other stuff. So yeah, the Illuminati was on my list as well, Brad. So yeah, that's a good call first up.
So here's my question then: why do you have that eye on your dollar bill?
We might have to dig up George Washington and ask him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I even put it down, but like the Eye of Horus, the all-seeing eye, the Eye of Providence, a lot of these secret societies use that as symbolism for some reason. You know what I mean? Obviously, it's something we don't know, but
yeah, and it's strange, isn't it? Because a lot of the secret societies will probably use very similar symbols and very similar to scriptures and stuff, but just slant it in a slightly different way. So you look at the Eye of Providence in the pyramid, and all of a sudden you're looking at it's all seen. It's the Eye of Horus. It goes back to ancient Egyptian times and all of this sort of thing. So yeah, it's a bit weird how they all sort of seem to look at the same type of symbolism as such. But yeah, I mean, I suppose the Illuminati was maybe what were the books? What the film with? Who was that?
the Da Vinci Code.
Yeah, the Da Vinci Code. Were they mentioning the Da Vinci Code? Was that the Illuminati that were in there? Was it? I can't remember.
The
There was
Priory
definitely-
of Sion.
Right, yeah, I
Yeah.
would say, yeah.
I mean, it was kind of a tie into a handful of them.
Which I
In
guess
fact- Go on, Brad. Sorry.
no, it's okay. The Priory of Sion, I guess they said, is actually a myth. Like, the Illuminati, there is, I think, I watched something today actually that said like secret societies that do exist even in modern times. And the Illuminati, they say, there are people that claim to be the Illuminati. Whether it's the Illuminati we all think of or not, I don't know. But they said the Priory of Sion is one of those things that was a total myth. But I do think it was sort of an offshoot of the Illuminati is the way it was sort of portrayed, right?
Yeah. Was it the Illuminati that did the what are they called? Is it pentagrams? Or are they the words that read the same back to front and upside down? Was that the Illuminati?
Yeah. It's not pentagrams, dude. You're gonna have to Google that one. The pentagram's a five-sided thing.
Yeah, it might.
I know what you're saying. Where it reads the same upside down.
It reads the same. It reads the same back to front, so you can flip the word vertically and horizontally, and it reads it. Give me a second, I'll find out what they are.
Like race car.
Yeah, that's that. Are they palindromes? Is that what it's called?
It might be. That
That's
sounds
a palindrome, yeah.
Yeah, but I think it looks the same if you flip it on like horizontally as well. I think. Bear with me.
I gotcha.
While you're Googling that, dude, I'm going to ask a question then about secret societies in general, but specifically the Illuminati. So if they're calling themselves a secret society, then how come we've heard of them?
I think
That's
a
a
lot
good
of them
point.
we're going to talk about. We know of them, obviously. We just don't know how they work, how they operate, who's involved, what the purpose is.
I think the ones we should be worried about are the ones we've never heard of.
I think you're right there for sure. And it was probably a lot easier to exist in secrecy, 200 years ago, or even 50 years ago before the internet and everything else. It's almost impossible to have a secret these days, just with how information is shared and how quickly it can spread. And unfortunately, people don't have a very high standard for what they will perceive as truth. People read something, they see it, they won't do any research. They just say, "Oh, I saw that someone on the internet said this is true," and they just accept it as fact and start spreading it that way.
Yeah.
They're called ambigrams, by the way.
Ambigram, yeah.
It's an
Ambigram.
ambigram, so it looks. You won't be able to. You probably can't. Oh no, you won't be able to pick that. But yeah, they look the same front to back and flipped top to bottom. So they read exactly the same.
I had a girlfriend like that once.
We all have, fortunately.
Oh, it was childish, but it had to be said. Yeah, so the Illuminati literally are like, so like if you believe in them, you believe they are what they are. The all-seeing, all-knowing, and all-powerful. So there is that kind of assumption that our politicians are involved with that. But I think, and I don't want to get too conspiratorial, or maybe I do, but over the last couple of years, I think we've sort of seen that necessarily our politicians aren't necessarily the most powerful people. It seems to be they're in the pockets of people with much more dangerous agendas.
I suspect it's big business, isn't it? Particularly, you look at, maybe in certain countries, you look at your big corporations, your big business. It's almost like your politicians are in their pockets, as opposed to actually it's the other way around, sort of thing. And actually, it's these guys that probably make more laws pass or don't pass than the actual politicians do. Do you know what I mean? It certainly seems that way. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And one thing, like you said, Beans, about secret societies, you should be scared of the ones you haven't heard of. I think it's the same way when it comes to powerful people. The people I think that are really probably calling the shots are people we've never even heard of, and
Yeah.
that's the way they want it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. The likes of Bill Gates, and Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, who are the wealthiest people in the world. We know there are much wealthier people out there, but these are the people that don't need to declare their wealth or have a need to do it. You know what I mean? They don't. It's not like who's got the biggest dick by wangling it around by how many notes they've got in the back pocket.
Well, and I've heard that there are like Saudi princes and things like that would dwarf like the fortunes of Elon Musk and Bill Gates and those people. It's just that they don't publicly report on their income, so you would never even know. I mean, they just have wealth that goes back hundreds and maybe thousands of years, even.
Yeah, it's
no income tax in Saudi.
Probably not.
I don't know.
I don't think there's any tax whatsoever in the United Arab Emirates, unless I'm mistaken. In Dubai, I don't believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, at me, because we do have listeners out there. Actually, do you know what? Briefly, we were in the top 50. Was it top 50 or top 200 in the United Arab Emirates on Apple? So yeah, let me know if I'm wrong, but I don't think they pay tax at all, which again begs a few questions.
Yeah, there was a company. It didn't make my list, but there was a group called the Bilderberg Group, and I think Bill Clinton was sort of part of it, and it's basically a sort of secret society of very, very wealthy, very, very influential, global elite type people, and they meet at various intervals, and whether or not it's to, whether it is to create law or statute or whatever it is, but there's rumors that various sort of prime ministers and heads of state and stuff have been part of that group. I think they were talking about there was something to do with Google, and Google sent an undercover person in there or something, and there was various, I won't quite say sort of satanic rituals, but there were various sort of things that they were discussing that obviously the vast and the wealthy don't sort of want to get out type thing. But it didn't get to my list, but it was one that I actually, when I was doing a bit of research, I did come across that. Bilber, Bilderberg, or I think it's called. But yeah, the various heads of state and stuff, I think are, and that's a known group. It's not a fictitious one. It's actually a known group of people, and they meet and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, and they're not to be confused with the Build-A-Bear company. Just
not
for
a
the
build, no. Just the record, no. Although you wouldn't mind stuffing a few of them up, but hey.
Wait.
That probably happens there too.
Yeah, it does.
It does.
Whoever's wearing the bull's head.
Well, that guy took over the Senate building, didn't he? Oh no, it was somebody else. But yeah, so here's a question then. So when you see the likes of the heads of state getting together at Davos and places like that, and you got the World Economic Forum, places like that, and we were mentioning a little bit of Da Vinci there. So Dan Brown, he's named a few of these in his different books. So the Lost Symbol and what have you, the one that was set in the States. he sort of outed like the World Economic Forum, and you know,
Yeah.
if you want to go a little bit further, so in his book Inferno, if you read that book about like him thinning out the population by starting off some world pandemic, that is a little bit close to home, doesn't it?
So one I had on my list was the Rosicrucians and the Georgia Guidestones.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which that is all, we're talking conspiracies. The guy that put the money down was R.C. Christian, and that was in the 80s, just walked into a bank, however many $1 million it was at the time. He said, you're taking care of this. We're building this here on this private property. No questions asked, and just left. Well, I want to say might have been in the spring, someone blew it up.
Mm.
And no one was ever arrested. And people tried to kind of decipher what that thing said. And a big part of it in that Georgia Guidestone, what they had written down was in like 7 or 8 different languages. One part talked about maintaining a world population under a certain amount. I can't remember what it was. And a lot of people seem to believe it was like a end of times prophecy. That's why those stones were put there. But it's just kind of crazy that somebody was able to blow them up like they did.
Yeah.
They tore them down. It's never talked about again. No one's arrested. And it's on state property now. So,
And that makes it feel that little bit more conspiratorial, doesn't it? When oh God, dude, we're going down that route again. But when the mass media aren't talking about something and it's there in plain view, that kind of bothers you a little bit, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. We deal with that here all the time. I mean, I'm sure it's not unique to us in the state.
No. I think we're probably talking globally at the minute, but certainly in the UK, the way that the media report on specifically Conservative Party over here, but politicians in general, it makes me very uncomfortable. It makes me very uncomfortable that I grew up trusting the news. I used to read the Independent newspaper on a daily basis, loved it, thought it was a fantastic piece of reporting. Unfortunately, it's no longer going, but I don't trust it anymore. I feel what we're watching is something. It's closer to propaganda. The way that we were always told that the Russians manipulated their population, the Chinese manipulated their population by the control of the media, and then like Ryan brings us something like that where something is blown up on property like that, and there's no need, there's no outcry to hold these people to account because it's dictated to them from above that doesn't need to be so, that this is our agenda, and you just need to tell the people it's okay, and everybody will believe it and go on about their business. And yeah, it's something that it's made me very, very, very uncomfortable over these last few years. I don't know about you guys.
Gazer muted himself. I don't think he realizes it.
Yeah, you're muted, dude.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah, I don't, sorry, I muted myself. No, I think it's weird because we've spoken about the media and the influence that the media has, and your propaganda and stuff, and particularly again countries that are seen to be behind an iron curtain. You look at Russia, and you can look at Korea and places like that you just can't get into it, and how they sort of feed their populace and stuff. We've sort of spoke about the media before, haven't we? And actually sort of how poor the media is really. But it's strange because you look at, there were stories about, and one of the groups that I had, and the same in the US, I suppose, is the Masons. You look at Freemasons and Freemasonry movement and stuff like that, and you think secret handshakes and, oh, it's okay, you don't need to. And I'm not saying, and before anybody does any sort of libelous comments or whatever, but oh, you don't need to do this because we've done this and we've got this agreement. And as much as the Masons have a bit of a bad rep, when you do sort of, I say, read some of their literature, they do quite a lot of charitable work, and yes, they're cloaked in, I suppose, secrecy and stuff, and there's all that, what they meet in Masonic lodges, and they meet 4 times a year, and there's various ceremonies and stuff, but actually they do a hell of a lot of charitable work, and they do quite a lot of good stuff. It's just that for whatever reason they seem to have got a bit of a bad rap over the last X number of 100 years. Do you know what I mean? And that goes back to, this policeman is a Mason, or this person in a high ranking place is a Mason, and therefore they're not going to, either fulfill their role, or they're not going to prosecute, or they're not going to do X, Y, or Z. Do you know what I mean? And they look after their own, and it's real secret stuff. But actually, when you read it, they publish quite a lot of the good stuff that they do, all the charitable work, all the community work that they do and stuff. So, I mean, the Masons got onto my list. I don't know a huge amount really, but it's probably one of the more famous, certainly in the UK, one of the more famous sort of secret societies as such. And it's one of those things that you don't really talk about it if you're in it. It's not something obviously that, because then it wouldn't become secret, obviously, but they probably are one of the bigger ones in the UK, certainly, that if you asked Joe Public, talk about a secret society, they would probably say the Masons, I suspect.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
I would say a majority of the ones I have on my list could be, found that they were founded right in your guys' backyard. I mean, the majority, and I'm talking 95% probably.
Wow.
Of what I have on my list. Now, granted, that's a big part of it is you guys as a country, there's a lot more history there than is in other places. So
yeah.
And
I know the Masons, they literally were stonemasons, weren't they? That's what they were, and that they built sort of very, very wealthy sort of huge buildings and stuff. They became very wealthy, and their job allowed them, and we're talking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago, their job allowed them to travel from place to place to build all of these different, whether it's cathedrals, lodges, whatever it may be, and they were perceived to be rich, influential, and that they got this then aura about them that they could travel around and they could not do what they wanted to, but they weren't necessarily held to account as would other people, and obviously then that's just sort of proliferated over the years, and it's now got to the point where it has gone a little bit more underground and it is a little bit more secret sort of thing. But that's what they did. They literally were stonemasons, and that's how the sort of masonry sort of originated as such. But yeah, I suppose it goes back to the UK, and maybe, I don't know, is it the empire? And as you said, is it the fact that we seem to have a slightly longer history than you guys, that maybe a lot of them have sort of developed from the UK? I don't know.
Yeah, I saw a lot of that too, though. As I was doing some research, it seemed like a lot of them would tie back to Western Europe, at least. The UK, Ireland, that region, for sure. And but as you're talking about the Masons and stonemasons, I couldn't help but think there are some interesting parallels between some of these secret societies and labor unions when you think about it, right? They have halls, they meet, their whole thing is, we have each other's best interest in mind, we're going to do what we can to make each other's lives better and stand up for each other. And and it's like a lot like the Masons. Like, I think still, granted, I think you could be from any walk of life, but I bet you a lot of people from the construction trade specifically probably gravitate towards masonry and so on and so forth. And even some of the other secret societies we might talk about, they're going to be made up of elite people or people who are plugged into big business and stuff like that.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, like when Gaz sort of said, that the almost the shroud is, they're shrouded in mystery, and that's probably why they are held in such reverence and why there was concerns about the Freemasons. But now I don't think it's there. Like you say, people are a little bit more aware of the stuff that they do. They are a little bit more aware of the charities. And then you've got stuff like the Illuminati. And these are the ones, are the people, the politicians, the very, very ultra wealthy, Kanye West as well, that seem to be the ones that we, I think it's recognized that we probably should be fearing, and not a bunch of guys who maybe scratch each other's back from time to time, but also do a little bit of good on the way.
What's a big one on your list, Beans?
Well,
what do you got over there?
Well, I see. I've gone for one. So you guys are all talking about, the shenanigans that we're all up to over here in Europe and the UK. Well, I picked out a very American one because I think it's one that I could have fitted right into. and it was set up in the Ozark Mountain regions of Missouri in the 1800s. Yeah, and they were a bunch of vigilantes who called themselves the Bald Knobbers.
The Bald Knobbers.
Yeah.
That's better than the Knob Gobblers, I guess.
yeah. I wouldn't be putting myself forward for that one. But no, I think I could fit in nicely with the Bald Knobbers. I would never really see myself much of a vigilante. Yeah. So they wore like almost like wrestling masks, like black wrestling masks with white eye holes and mouth holes. So they were quite intimidating in appearance, but they set themselves up to do a little bit of good. And although they were a secret society and they were almost hiding their identity, there was something closer to like the Avengers than somebody out there doing, trying to do something for their own financial gain. They actually set it up because crime was getting out of hand in that region and they wanted to do something about it. But yeah, have you guys ever heard of the Bald Knobbers before?
I have not. No.
First time. I'm a virgin.
Yeah, me
First
too.
time for me.
Yeah, me too. It was only when I sat down and I wanted to try and find something a little bit more unusual, a little bit maybe that, you guys perhaps wouldn't have come across or have heard of. And yeah, so the Bald Knobbers, dude, I put myself forward to that. That's actually like an alternative name for Tall Boy Radio when Andy's on it.
No, I don't have any hair under this hat either, so just
dude.
plug me right in. Let's go.
Welcome aboard.
Let's go get fitted for our masks.
Yeah. Oh, dude, I should have got my mask out. I got that wrestling mask, dude. I should have got it out tonight.
You should, dude. You should have done. That would have been cool.
I got a couple back here.
Yeah.
So what's next on your list then, Brad? Go on, fire one this way.
Yep, I got you. So we've got the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. This is a secret society that was actually formed by a couple offshoots from Freemasonry. But what's interesting is they definitely went down like a totally different rabbit hole. They were.
Hey, I'm gonna call out and I'm gonna stand up for the Masons on this one. Untrue.
What?
Former Masons
Masons
started it. Don't tie it to them because they get into some really weird shit.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They went down a totally different path. They were.
Hopefully, you're going to talk about the cake of light.
Well, no, I mean, it's pretty brief. Just, they were devoted to practicing the occult. They're into metaphysics and paranormal activities that were happening in the 19th and 20th centuries. And they had different orders. The first order is pretty normal, like when you read about it, as far as the things they were into. I mean, they were in like astrology, which compared to the other things is normal. The second order, though, they taught magic that included astral travel. And then the third order, they had these secret chiefs who would direct the lower two orders by spirit communication that they receive. I mean, this is really bizarre stuff, like I said, based in magic and paranormal and everything else. And it sounds like Ryan might even have some more information on this particular society. But those were kind of the couple things that stuck out to me as I was reading about them, was the things that tie back to sort of the supernatural, if you will.
Also created by an Englishman, Aleister Crowley.
Aleister Crowley. See, it's weird because I looked at there was one called the Hermetic Order of the Silver Twilight, which is Adam will know what that is, and that's a fictitious group, but to do with the occult, and Aleister Crowley, who is just absolutely just swathed in occult sort of lore. Really, he's Mr. sort of weird supernatural occult guy, and it was through that then you look at the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and you think, okay, is that based on that? Is the fictitious group based on that group? And they were talking about like occults and then there was like pentacasts being drawn on various sort of chalk and candles and all this sort of stuff going on. So very similar. But yeah, I sort of came across that. It wasn't on my list, Brad, but I sort of had seen that one. But Aleister Crowley is a very famous guy in terms of occult sort of groups.
Well, here's the thing. So we had a witch on the podcast, didn't we, Gaza? We had a witch come on, and we asked her about the term white witch and witches. She doesn't like me called a white witch. She is a witch. Doesn't think that there's any specification needed between the two. But yeah, that's what I want to hear about. I want to hear about some freaky stuff going on, like, you know what I mean? Some bizarre rituals and what have you. But it all seemed very ordinary and very healthy, didn't it?
It did, and she didn't. I mean, not that she wouldn't necessarily tell us on the podcast, but there didn't seem to be many sort of satanic rituals going on in terms of her, in her world or her life sort of thing. And she spoke very much about, from memory, sort of just your well-being and using various incantations and things to develop yourself and stuff. There certainly wasn't any. So we're going to slit this goat's throat and throw it over an altar and pray to whichever god. Do you know what I mean? I certainly don't remember any story like that.
Well, we just did a podcast last week where we talked about the Satanic Temple, and it's funny because as we got into the details of it, when you hear about it, you think there's Satan worship being involved in this, and it has nothing to do with worshiping Satan at all. It's basically they used that name because they wanted to establish themselves as the opposite of organized religion and Christianity. But their whole message was very like good in what it was. I mean, it was just about kind of a live and let live, be a good person, treat other people well, don't judge people, kind of, own who you are, but be open to criticism. If somebody criticizes you, like they have the right to tell you they don't like what you're doing, but just take it and move on. I mean, it was nothing about it was crazy in any way, shape, or form other than the name. And I was telling Ryan, I'm like, honestly, this is something that would probably gain some traction if they could just change their branding, because there's people that probably just blow right past it because they see Satanic Temple and they're like, well, that sounds crazy, but their ideas and philosophies aren't crazy at all.
I've said this a few times on this podcast. I think the devil gets a bad rep because this is a guy who's dedicated himself to punishing the evil. That doesn't sound like a bad guy to me.
That's a good point. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
You do know the biggest trick the devil ever pulled was convince the world he didn't exist. I mean, come
on.
No,
that was Kaiser Sose, dude.
Same thing, innit?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I guess if you're going to call yourself satanic in this sort of day and age, then I guess in this day and age, probably more so in the past, you are asking for trouble a bit. You're caught in disaster. But so here's another one. I'm going off a bit of a tangent now. It's just kind of made me think, and it was the one that Ryan was talking about as well. So, and I apologize if either you two guys are Mormons. But so the Church of the Church of the Latter-day Saints, you know what I mean? How that came to be, don't you think that sounds a little bit like it should be a secret society and not a religion? Like Jesus came back into like New York and spoke in this language that only this one person could understand, and they all got on board with him and believed him and believed everything that he said and started following him, wearing strange pants and taking multiple wives. Does that not sound a little bit more like it should be a secret society, not like a modern practiced religion?
It's almost more. I mean,
if we're bringing cults into this, it's to go off the deep end real fast.
Well, I had at my previous job, I had a coworker who grew up Mormon, and he had left the church, but he talked about how, once or twice a year, like he would have and he's moved. He was from out west, like near, where the church is in Utah and stuff. And, living in Illinois, halfway across the country. And he's like, once or twice a year, man, I have people that show up at my front door trying to like reel me back in and get me to come back to the church. I'm like, how do they like find you? Why do they try so hard? He's like, well, I guess his parents are still pretty devout. And like, basically his parents are just trying to like save his soul, right, in their minds. But I mean, he told me some crazy stories, and I mean, now with things like TikTok and whatever, you see all sorts of weird stuff about things that go on.
Yeah, man, it does. It does make you uncomfortable, doesn't it? And then the other one that always, and I think this is closer to a cult or to a secret society than it is a religion. Scientology, dude. What are you guys thinking about that?
No, anything that's like anointed Tom Cruise is like one of their
the head of Scientology ever.
Yeah, that's another. And what's crazy about that religion is it's so new that you can literally like the fact that some guy just whipped it up out of thin air is well documented, and you still have people that flock to it. And then the way they treat people who leave the church or oppose the church is again well documented, but
so
people just ignore
funny tie into yours, pal. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. There was a scientist. I'm trying to think what his name is. Him and Aleister Crowley, huge fans. Him and L. Ron Hubbard, best friends. He had a big part. It's Jack something. I can't remember it. Big part in helping L. Ron Hubbard when he first started the Church of Scientology, like giving them some ideas, which if you've read through some of their stuff, it's as off the page as the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. So
see, I remember reading Christopher Reeve's autobiography, the guy who played Superman. And he was involved with Scientology for a little while, and the way he spoke about it, and then it was a way, if you want to get to that next level, well, you got to hand over a load of cash as well. So like a lot of religions, it is a good way of separating people from their money. But with that one, and again, it is shrouded in mystery. If you watch the Louis Theroux documentary that he made about, you get Louis Theroux, don't you, in the States, Ryan?
yeah.
Yeah. So he made a documentary where actually he was quite clever about the way that they went about it, and he suckered them in a little bit. And yeah, he was harassed and harangued a fair bit at airports and things. And I'd be interested to know if he still gets a little bit of heat from that today.
Well, it's crazy just to think the reach they have.
Yeah,
Because even Leah Remini, she said when she left the church, for years, they just continued to, have an impact on her life. And then she's like, fuck it, I'm going to tell everybody what you did. But people still it's big news in the beginning, but it's how it always happened. It just kind of goes away,
Yeah.
They never follow up on anything.
Yeah, and that is a shame. That is a shame, isn't it? That we and I guess maybe Elon's onto something, trying to help out with Twitter and what have you, and trying to give a little bit of transparency. I don't know what his motives really are as pure as they appear to be, but hey ho, let's give him the benefit of the doubt for now. So go on, Ryan. What's your next on your list?
One I find most fascinating, Skull and Bones. The Ivy League's probably most notorious secret society at Yale. And the fact that they have Geronimo's skull there in the tomb, which is their little house meeting place. His family, Geronimo's family, sued Skull and Bones and lost.
Wow.
They were not allowed to get their relatives' skull back to be placed because Native Americans take it very serious, burial, the afterlife. And somehow they lost that suit.
Well, it's probably because whoever the judge was probably a member of Skull and Bones
Exactly.
at Yale, if I had to guess. It's funny. I had that as actually the number one on my list. And once we got talking, I knew that one isn't one that was going to last too long before someone got to it. But to add to it, so I guess that his skull was robbed from his grave 9 years after his death. So he was imprisoned at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and that's where he passed away. And then 9 years later, some servicemen who were members of the Skull and Bones had went out to dig up the body and take the skull. And Prescott Bush, who was George W. Bush's grandfather, was apparently among the raiding party that went and took the skull. So, and I had the part about the lawsuit and everything.
The funny part is they have multiple famous heads. Like Geronimo just might be the most talked about, but there's, in the crypt or whatever, they have a handful of these things.
I thought I saw they had the skeleton of, I don't think it was a king, but maybe a prince, of Great Britain or something like that, in their tomb.
Sir Lancelot? They got Sir Lancelot? Is that what you're talking about?
No, I don't. No.
Listen. If they want Prince Andrews, I'll give him a hand getting it.
He's probably sadly he's probably protected by people who are a part of that society.
Well, that's it. Absolutely, yeah. So Skull and Bones again. So I've read a little bit about that one, and again, it goes back to a little bit. When the Gaz sort of made a comment earlier. So when he talked about Europeans having a much longer history, well, actually, that's one thing that probably isn't talked about enough in America. I don't think is actually you got a huge history. Just unfortunately, most of it is Native Americans that seems to be a little bit marginalized and a little bit forgotten, doesn't it? And stories like that don't, it doesn't.
I think a lot of times that history isn't always told the way it was.
No.
The way it took place, and that's unfortunate because it should just, you imagine when you're being told something, it should just be straight down the road. This is what happened. Up for you to decide who you think the asshole in the situation is.
Mm.
But you never get it that way. They always
No.
paint it in a very different light.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, I
absolutely.
mean, because what happened, as we all know, right? Westward expansion in the United States. The government basically moved west and took their land from them, killed anyone who resisted, and now they're parked. I mean, still to this day, there's several reservations around the country where descendants of Native Americans live and basically live probably really close to the poverty line in most cases.
Mm.
And it is sad because they'll highlight some of that in the history books, but a lot of it is sort of they put lipstick on it a little bit to smooth it over and maybe portray these people to be savages or whatever else in some cases. But really, they were just people who were trying to protect their land and their way of life.
That's it. This is it. And there's the old saying that the West wasn't wild until the white folks turned up.
There's probably some truth to that.
Yep.
Yeah. And
White people, we talk about that all the time. You want to talk about somebody that ruins things? White people.
Yeah. Oh, listen, you might have kicked the British out back there when you had your War of Independence, but you kept our foreign policy. That's literally what we've done everywhere we've been in the world.
Right?
Yeah.
Nope, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, everywhere we've been, we've treated it as though it was ours with utter disrespect, and sometimes then that story never really gets told from that perspective either. The history is told from through a very rose tinted glass from every perspective. But yeah, that's a fairly shocking thing, isn't it? Like you say, the importance that Native Americans place on the bones of their relatives being in sacred ground, and instead it's in some rich dude's thing. Good old the Bush family, I'm sure they went on to do good things after that, though, didn't they? The Bushes.
Yeah, it's funny
Yeah.
how entrenched. It's just funny how entrenched they are, though. I mean, and not even just that family, although it's one of the more prominent ones. But they're all tied in somewhere to something where they were, sort of anointed and lifted to power for one reason or another. Usually because they were had connections to which they could be controlled by the people who really called the shots, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah, even down to Bush when he got elected. I remember hearing all about the Chads in Texas. The way that the election cards were punched. There was a lot of questions about that and what was counted, what wasn't. And then even just up until recently, when old Mr. Bush, George W. Bush, was talking about the what's going on between Ukraine and Russia, and he made a bit of a Freudian slip when instead of saying invading Ukraine, he accidentally said invading Iraq, and basically talking about it was some absolute horror, and he used the word Iraq instead of Ukraine. I thought that's very interesting, isn't it? Him and Mr. Blair, I don't know what they got up to.
Yeah, and I listened to a podcast actually. I listen to a couple of podcasts that are done by former Navy SEALs, or maybe you can just call them Navy SEALs. I don't know if you ever stop being one, even if you retire. But but the guy Rob O'Neill, the guy that shot Osama bin Laden, and he talks about how they used 9/11 and all that stuff. The Bush family as a means to find some way to correlate it to Iraq and everything else, and to go invade Iraq. And I mean, he's very transparent that he's like, literally, it was a political and personal mission. That's it. Like there was no other reason beyond that. He's like, there were no weapons of mass destruction, or I mean, was Saddam Hussein a terrible person that was killed a lot of innocent people? Sure, no doubt about that. But I mean, hell, just say, hey, we're gonna go in here and get this guy because he's an asshole. At least don't try to pretend it's for some other reason.
No, just call it what it is. Guys, go on.
I got another big one on my list.
Go for it.
I would love to see if anybody else has it, and that's the Hellfire Club.
I did not, because I thought you'd take it.
Created in Ireland, but like the most famous version of it was Sir Francis Dashwood in England. They met underground. Same thing, politicians. Ben Franklin maybe made a couple stays there. Kings, dukes. But they refer to themselves as devils, and the women that they would invite to the club, or prostitutes, would be known as nuns. and like their big
Right.
thing, they were big on blasphemy, anti-church. Their motto basically was "Do what thou wilt," which Aleister Crowley took later in life to create a lot of his offshoots. But very, you got to think of the time for them to basically advertise that's what they do there. That takes some balls. You know what I mean? Like, totally different world, 1700 compared to now. So for them to walk around advertising that and to maybe not catch as much shit as anybody else would, fascinating.
I think the thing is though, in that sort of time frame, there was more. Well, it was. I think it was more. It was less transparent. I think you could literally do shit like that, and it's like, well, that's okay because that guy's got wealth, he's got money. And I think nowadays we hide it a little bit better. See, when you said the Hellfire Club, I thought we were going down the Stranger Things route there,
No,
dude.
to be honest, I'm in the minority. I've never watched.
What?
Never even seen it.
I
Wow.
just
Not one
I
episode.
watched it like just in the past year. I started watching it and watched it all.
Yeah, I was a
Yeah.
little bit late to the Stranger Things sort of party. I think it was you, dude, didn't you? That said, you got to get on it, you got to watch it. I was like, yeah. And then I started watching. I was like, oh, this is cool. And then just almost binged it and sort of thing, and then couldn't wait for the new season and da. But yeah,
Mm. But yeah, so the Hellfire Club, that's another one that us Brits are responsible for. It's not always, I think if we were to mark this up right now, we're not looking so good here, dude.
I mean, the original one was in Ireland, but it kind of progressed to
Yeah.
the home country.
Well, Ireland was. Oh, well, actually, we probably shouldn't go down. If we want to court controversy, and we should probably steer away from our treatment of the Irish over the years, shouldn't we?
Yeah, let's just not go there, dude.
Yeah. We don't want to get in trouble with
We'll
those
upset.
guys.
We'll upset too many people.
Yeah, I'm starting to realise why Dave said he couldn't make it now.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a good one for him to miss, maybe.
It was. Go on, Gaza. What's on your list? Have you got anything interesting on there?
It's just we've been talking quite a lot about sort of ancient, historic sort of secret societies, and I don't know whether Brad will have come across this because it sort of looks as though maybe he's done a little bit of sort of similar research to himself, and it was the Cicada 3301 group, and I don't know whether or not you sort of picked that up, Brad, at all on your list.
Saw it, but it's not on my list.
Yeah, so this is a group. I say it's a group. It's a relatively new secret society as such, and it was spawned through the internet phenomenon, and basically they put a puzzle out. In the first puzzle came out in 2012, and they invited people to solve this puzzle, and it's one of the most intricate, really difficult sort of puzzles, most agonizing sort of puzzles to solve, and nobody knows who's responsible for it. Nobody knows really who set it. Nobody really knows who's responsible for it. Nobody knows what the prize is at the end if you solve it. And what happened was the first one came out in 2012. There was then another one in 2013. There was then another one in 2014. And as yet, the puzzle that was from 2014 is still unsolved.
Wow.
And there was a guy, there was a Swedish guy, I want to say Jason Ericsson, Jacob Ericsson, something like that, who he went all the way through, and basically it was an image, and the first, and I've got it in, and basically the first sort of puzzle came up, and it sort of said, "Hello, we're looking for highly intelligent individuals. To find them, we've devised a test. There's a message hidden behind the image. Find it, and it will lead you to the road to finding us. We look forward to meeting the few of you who will make it all the way through. Good luck." And that's it. And there was just an image. And this guy used various steganography stuff and ciphers and this, that, and the other, and that led him to a URL. And then he clicked the URL, and then it gave him some phone numbers, and then it gave him GPS coordinates, etc., etc., etc. But it just struck me that secret societies. Everybody thinks, oh my god, like Knights of the Templars, Illuminati, all these people, all these societies that date back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Whereas actually, this is one that dates back to 2012, and genuinely, nobody understands who set it, why they set it, what the goal is if you actually solve it. And there was various rumours about, is it Is it the CIA? Do they recruit? So the people that follow and if you get is it CIA? Is it the British Secret Service? Is it? And those have subsequently been debunked a little bit, but actually nobody even now to this date, as far as I'm aware, knows anything about what these puzzles are and why. And they came up and there was various things on Twitter, and literally they would put a clue a year, and they would just literally like 2012, 2013, 2014, and then it stopped, and nobody solved it yet. And it just struck me as like, well, that's a bit weird. That's a bit like, is it a secret society? I don't know, but somebody's done it for something.
Mm.
And then they were going down, is it just this rogue hoax, like bogus guy that's just thrown it out there and it's some sort of, programmer? But it takes people around the world. It's like there's clues that lead them to, and it sounds like a bit grandiose, as though it's like a race around the world type thing where you've got to go to this place and then this place and this place. But literally, the clues are scattered all across the world. And he thought he'd solved it, and he followed this URL, and it basically came up with an image of a duck, which apparently is their image for you haven't got it yet. And it basically said, whoops, just decoys this way. Looks like you can't guess how to get the message out. And then it's literally, and that's it. But within that, there was another message, and he used various other software. So within that image, there was another one that led him elsewhere. And it's just like this massive internet trail hunt. And it was like, and it just struck me as a bit weird because is it a society? Don't know. Is it a cult? Probably not. But it just struck me as a bit odd that it was going on and nobody really knows why, sort of thing.
Yeah. Full enough, dude. That's what I had next on my list as well.
Really?
Yeah, honestly, in that order. Yeah, I'm not saying I solved it, and that's why I thought I'd put it in, because that wouldn't be true.
I can guarantee you haven't solved it.
No, I haven't. No, but I tell you what, that's got
It's intriguing.
It is intriguing. It's got a little bit of a plot of one of Dan Brown's books about it. I guarantee he's sat home breathing away on it right now.
Do you think that's his next book? Do you think?
Like, he needs to do something. He's not done anything for a while. He's a little sod.
Yeah, it's either something really awesome or it's some guy that's like, you know what, I'm just going to put out all these clues and send someone on a wild goose chase where they're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars traveling around the world for nothing.
Yeah. It's either really, really cool or really shit. There's no in between, is it? There's got to be a reason for doing it. Otherwise, it's just a bit. He's basically just some guy just mugged everybody off. You know what I mean? It's literally. But this guy spent like serious amounts of cash trying to decipher and trying to write code and it gave him. I think when you read it, I think he said it gave him a telephone number, and he rang this number, and there was an automated message that then sent him elsewhere, and it's to do with the States, and he had to go somewhere in the States, and he got to this place, and literally it's almost like a round the world treasure hunt, and I was just like, well, but nobody knows why it's there. Nobody knows who's even set the clues. That's the intriguing thing for me is, as you said, I can't remember which one of you guys said it earlier. It is, in the days, the internet, you can't keep anything secret nowadays, really, but nobody knows where this has originated from. So it just struck me as a bit weird.
How pissed would everyone be if it ends at Soldier Field of the Chicago Bears and Detroit Lions? That'd be the worst.
Everybody.
It'd be the worst game in the world. Yeah. Not only would it be the worst game in history, it'd be the worst treasure hunt ever. Woo, well done. You won a trip. To be fair, I'd love to go to Soldier Field, so I'm like, hell, I'm all in. But
well, you better start hunting just in case. That's what is at the end of the rainbow.
Well, and by all accounts, aren't we moving from Soldier Field? Is there going to be? I think we're looking at a new stadium, I think, somewhere or other. So yeah,
I don't know. Arlington Heights.
They want to move out to Arlington Heights, but I don't. It sounds like the city's doing everything they can to try to put a stop to it and make all these promises for what they'll do to Soldier Field. But if I was the Bears, if they can, as long as there aren't too many political roadblocks, I'd move. I would move out there because they could make it a whole complex where they could have hotels, casinos, restaurants. I mean, you could really capitalize big time financially and on that move, I think, and that they don't have the footprint and where they're at right now downtown to do that.
Yeah.
Well, just going back to that cicada thing.
Sorry,
of all,
dude,
No. First of all, I'm glad you mentioned it because I had no idea how to pronounce it.
Well, you know what cicada is? It's a little insect, isn't it? So, and that's part of the clue. So the part of the clue is, and this is what they don't. It is you've got basically cicada 3301 is like it's an insect and it's a prime number. Why even those two things? Why have they been put together? What's the significance to cicada? What's the significance to prime number? Don't get it. And again, that just falls part of the intrigue as to what it is.
Interesting. See, I have a theory who's behind it, dude.
Do you?
Yeah.
It's not Elon Musk again.
It's not Musk. No. It's that Jacobson guy. I think he's just stuck.
Really?
He's stuck something online. His wife's been really fucking nagging at him to go get the loft cleared out or the garage sorted through, and he's stuck balls to this.
Just completely just made it up.
I'm just gonna fuck off around the world and have fun and just say, look, I tell you, this is where we get our fame and fortune, our fortune and glory, as they say in Indiana Jones. And he's just done one and had some fun.
Brilliant.
But if he has, fair play to him.
He wrote, he felt as though he'd got the response, and then he must have messaged them or rang them or whatever it was. I think it's a phone number, and there was a voicemail message that said, and I'll quote it, "Very good, you've done well. There are 3 prime numbers associated with the original image. 3301 is one of them. You have to find the other 2. Multiply all 3 of these numbers together and add a .com to find the next step. Good luck and goodbye." And it's just, and that literally, that's it. So where do you start from that? Like, I mean, how many prime numbers are there? There's, where do we even? I mean, that guy must be tearing his hair out if he's even got any hair left, because he's probably followed this thing from 2014 all the way through, and he still hasn't solved it. So
he's now part of the bald knobbers.
Oh yeah, beat me to it, dude. I'll give you 2 other prime numbers then taken from 3301. So 3 plus 3 plus 0 plus 1 gives you 7. Yeah, that's a prime number. I'll give you another one. Yeah, 3 times 3 times 0 times 1. Oh no, that don't fucking work. I'll forget that. It was close.
That's where B falters at the first
step.
Yeah,
That's it. Yeah, it all worked out apart from 0 times 1 isn't 1.
Yeah, close though.
Yeah, it's good.
You think that's what, dude?
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
So did you get that in the others as well then? That's weird.
Yeah, honestly, that was what I had next on my list. So I tell you what I'll do then. I'm going to go back to the Freemasons a little bit, because you mentioned it earlier, and I thought about mentioning it then. I thought, no, I'll save it a little bit later. Do you know how many Freemasons there are in the UK?
I don't actually.
A couple of 100,000, I would imagine.
You're right on the money, dude. 200,000.
Yeah.
200,000. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. High five, dude.
I know.
They do it right over there too. It's top hats. They take it very serious.
Yeah, and there's 7,000 lodges. So you talk about a secret society, I think when you think about like a secret society, to keep things a secret, you know yourself. If you've got a secret, you don't want the world to know. The less people that know about it, the more secretive it stays. But when there's 200,000 people involved, and yeah, we've all sort of heard of the Freemasons, just how secretive, I don't know what goes on in there, so I guess it's secretive to some degree. But, for those people to keep it, a little bit of shrouded in mystery, I find that really curious that number of people are involved.
But does that not, and I don't know, is that because of the type of things that they're involved in, they're worried about repercussions if ever they do? If it does become, I don't know, if it does become some mainstream and people do understand, is it, and I'm not saying it's anything illegal before we get libelous sort of and we get taken to court or anything like that, but if they are involved in various things that they don't want other people, and it might be a political agenda, it could be a business agenda, it could be corporate agenda, whatever that agenda may be, they obviously want to keep it secret for a reason, because as you said, if they're going to promote all their charitable work and their community work, the more people that know about that, the better. Whereas the flip side of that is actually a secret society. You want to remain secret. So there is a little bit of a weird sort of mix there, and I don't quite get it.
I think that's what adds to it. It's that mystique. You don't know what happens there. And not so much the Masons themselves, because usually they wouldn't advertise that they're doing something good. But like the Shriners, you have the hospital for children.
Yes.
Free of charge. Can come at any time, receive whatever care they need.
Yeah.
Families are taken care of, and it's all independently funded. That's an awesome thing. That's an offshoot of the, that's an independent body of the Masons. And they do great stuff. Not saying there probably isn't a handful of people in there that are shady, and that's with anything. You want to talk about cops, you want to talk about politicians, anybody else. There's always a handful that's going to ruin it for the rest. But a big part, I think, is that mystique. You don't know what happens there, and I think that's why we're sitting here talking about it.
Yeah,
Well, I think that
absolutely.
there's one of two likelihoods when it comes to the Masons, and that is that we have what we publicly know about the Masons as far as they it's a group of men who get together, they do charitable work, and it's just about maybe the fellowship of getting together and trying to, I guess, move towards the goal of being a better human being. Um, so that that part exists at the local lodge level, and then there is this maybe higher, more secret tier that's of the elite that even the vast majority of Masons aren't necessarily aware of that exists,
Yeah.
or the fact that a lot of the powerful and elite people in the world happen to also be Masons. And so everybody assumes there has to be some sort of correlation there, that put them in that position, but it could just be a coincidence, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm
If
willing
you
to
believe
bet.
in coincidence.
Yeah, but I'm willing to bet though that if the man, there's a lot of people there that might be Freemasons. So there's a number of U.S. presidents which are known to be Freemasons, but then they've also been members of other prominent secret societies as well. So
Yeah.
if you remember one, and maybe you remember of others, and maybe the Freemasonry bit isn't the suspicious element that everybody thinks it is. It's the other stuff that goes on behind those other closed doors that, that the Freemasons, because they're secretive and they don't talk about it, they don't say what goes on. It's very easy to say that these guys are responsible because they're never going to retort or respond.
Or, I mean, maybe it's just a superficial, not superficial, but just a very organized method of networking. You know
Mm,
what I mean?
Yeah.
That's kind of what it amounts to, I think. And
yeah.
and maybe some of the hurdles that exist to become a part of these societies, it's just a vetting process. Like, hey, look, like if we're going to bring someone into this society, into this brotherhood, whatever they want to refer to it as, and where it's going to be a person that we as a group are collectively going to have their best interest in mind too, you want to make sure they're not a piece of shit, right? I mean, and that they're
Yeah.
willing to do the things they have to do to become a part of it. And then they've demonstrated sort of their worth as a human being. And at that point, you're like, okay, like you've obviously displayed you're a good person. So now you have the whole network of this organization at your disposal to, you know, take you to whatever heights you want to go to, and
Yeah. It's strange because going back to the skull and bones sort of, there's hugely limited affected places available. And did they say there's like less than 1,000 skull and bones or whatever it was? So of the people that are living, there must be there must be more people that want to then become involved and get involved. So what's the selection process? And it's the same with whether you're the Masons or whoever it may be. Is what's the process for and I suppose even if it is an application, I don't know where I assume you're vetted, and what does that vetting process look like? But how do you get into the Skull and Bones? There's only 800 living members or whatever it is, less than 1,000 living members. So how do you even get involved in that?
well, what
Does somebody recommend you to it?
Well, one thing I read about when I was doing some of my and the Skull and Bones, actually, I went down the rabbit hole with them way more than any of the others I researched. And it sounds like Yale University itself, when it was founded hundreds of years ago, was based in like your placement and your worth on campus was directly tied to your social standing.
Wow.
And like there was no pretending it was otherwise. Like if you came from a wealthy family that was connected, you were automatically put at the top of the food chain in their social structure. And it was very, cut and dry, like of, you're here, you're here, you're
Yeah.
here. And eventually the university did away with that philosophy. And it sounds like the Skull and Bones sort of formed as it, they as a group that still embodies those initial principles of your social standing and where you are in society is what dictates your worth and your rank, if you will, in that group. And I imagine that you have to be in a certain percentage of people to even be considered
Yeah.
for that society at that point in time. And then I think a lot of it probably is, legacy. My dad was a Skull and Bones, so I'm a Skull and Bones, and so on
Yeah.
and so forth.
Yeah.
I'm sure that happens a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I get that.
I get where you're going with this.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, with these episodes, we do try and keep them around about an hour, and I'm saying this, I know we're past the hour mark. So we're doing a 5 for 5. Let's go quickly around again and see if anybody's got anything else on their list that they want to chuck out there that's worth a mention. You want to start with yourself, Brad?
Yeah. The only thing that I had left that I hadn't referred to was what Gaz mentioned earlier, the Bilderberg group, and he kind of covered the details of the makeup of this group and who they are and what they're from. But one thing I found the most interesting is there is a conspiracy out there that all the members of this group are part of a reptilian race.
Oh, the
That
reptile people, we love
yeah,
them. They crop up
and
all over the place.
yes, that the entirety of this group are reptilians who
How dare you come at Margaret
have
Thatcher like
have
that?
have turned humanity into a slave race, and that they feed off children. Like that's literally what I saw. I'm like,
Wow.
and so yeah, talk about taking something that's already kind of clouded in secrecy and just like doubling, tripling down to the most extreme circumstance. And then the other thing that we never got to, and I honestly I just picked this group because of their name. And I know that Ryan would be a big fan, and that is the Righteous and Harmonious Fists.
Yes.
They were also known as the Boxers. So these were the people that caused the Boxer Rebellion in China in the 19th century. So Europeans from all over start coming in and settling parts of China. This group of people form, the Righteous and Harmonious Fist that becomes known as the Boxers. They have a problem with it, so they basically rebel against all the invading Europeans, and it puts the government of China in a real conundrum because they're like, on one hand, they sort of like the fact that these Europeans are coming in because I assume it's probably decent for their economy, and then you have your citizens who are literally rising up against them, and when push comes to shove, they sort of half-ass side with the rebellion. And long story short, the dynasty that was in power at that time crumbles, and it's just a whole fiasco that was caused as a result of it. But it's kind of one of those deals where most rebellions we hear about in history were successful, and ended up better than where they started. This one, it sounds like, just caused mass chaos.
Yeah, I think I don't like the sound of that one, to be honest with you. I've got a question then, just going back to your serpent people one. Does anybody here believe in serpent people?
I think the older I get, I guess, and the more stories that come out, I do think that, I think that UFOs, aliens, are a real thing. I think that it would be very arrogant of us as human beings to assume that we are the only intelligent life forms in the universe. To what extent, I don't know. It's I would have no idea, and I think that even people who speculate are doing just that, just speculating based off what maybe makes sense. Do I, I guess so. I don't know. I couldn't give you a clear answer. Maybe. I guess I'm at least open to the idea that it's possible. Do I think it's likely? I don't have any proof. But I think that aliens are legit.
Yeah, I can see where you go with that one. For me, with the serpent people, I kind of think that there's those out there, whether because they're in a secret society, because of the privilege they're given to them by wealth or by birth or by title, that they live a very different existence to us. Are they serpents? No, but they are vastly different in their existence on this planet to ours, and their perception of modern day life and how it affects them, that they might as well be, if that makes sense.
Maybe it's a metaphor.
I think so.
I would go back because there's indigenous tribes that have stories of people living underground. And if you were a reptile, more than likely that's where you would be. So I would give some sort of, belief to it, maybe. I guess I don't know whether they still exist or not. That's
Yeah.
We covered this, didn't we? When we did, did we do a conspiracy episode? Or we might have done a couple, and we did like flat Earth, and we did lizard people, and we did various other things. I'm not convinced lizard people. I think you're right, Ad. It might be metaphor for something else. But Aliens, absolutely, Brad. Yeah, I think it's really naive of us to think that in a solar system and a universe of infinite planets, and that we're actually the only one that can actually form life. And actually, I've gone on record sort of saying I think there are probably aliens out there, and are they all the typical grey that we know? Probably not. Could they be that? Yeah. Who's to say that we haven't been visited? Because again, we're really naive to think that we potentially could be the most technologically advanced race in the universe. What a crock of shit that is. Because actually, if we've got to this point in technological advancement, who's to say that a planet, a solar system, a galaxy somewhere else hasn't got to that hundreds of years ago and can form, space travel, etc., etc., etc. Do you know what I mean? It's just in a universe of infinite possibilities. It's really naive of us, and really, it's actually quite shocking that some people think that we are the only life out there, and I just don't agree with that at all. But that's a whole completely different episode. If you guys want to come back on and talk about that, we're more than happy to do that, because I'm a big conspiracy theorist. So yeah, we can shoot hoops on that all day long, pal.
Yeah.
Well, just think of some of the societies we talked about and their symbols. They all date back to a very specific time, and that's the Egyptians. That's a civilization that did things that we can't recreate today. We have no answers. We have more questions than answers.
That's mind blowing, isn't it? That's mind blowing. When you look at what they created, it's mind blowing.
You look at the construction of the Great Pyramids, and even now, with the advancement in technologies that we have, we would not be able to recreate the Great Pyramids to the precision that they did when they first made them, back in whenever it was that they first made them. Even now, and you just think, oh, holy shit, like what? And that opens up a whole other realm of possibilities, doesn't it? So yeah.
Yeah, and if you're going to tell me that a bunch of guys with a sled and some ropes pulled those gigantic thousands of tons stones across the desert to put them in place, like, no fucking way.
Fuck off.
So before we go to Ryan and find out what's on his list, I did just want to go back to a little bit about something that Gaz said about flat earthers. Just out of interest, dude, I've been messaging a load of flat earthers recently, trying to get somebody on the podcast to tell us why we're wrong in believing it's a sphere. And I don't know what they've got against me, but they will not get back to me, those guys.
They probably think, I imagine they probably think you're trying to make a mockery of them, would be my guess. I mean, and I tell you what, if you came on the Pubtime podcast, that's exactly what would happen. You guys probably have a little more integrity than we do.
Well, I've made it clear we wouldn't. You put your point to us. We ain't going to take the piss out of you. I might tell you why we think you're wrong. Yeah, we might disagree and tell you why we think you're wrong. But I tell you come and convince us that the world is flat. It's going to take some convincing, but come and have a go.
That takes facts, and those don't exist.
Therein lies the problem. Go on, Ryan. What's on your list, dude?
One of my last good ones is we got the Knights of the Golden Circle and all the Confederate gold missing. They had quite the cachet of riches. They were just Jefferson Davis hidden. Jesse James has a part in it. Yeah. And nobody really knows who these people were. I mean, obviously soldiers in the Confederate Army, maybe generals, but
one thing that's
to this day unsolved
about that is, I think it's pretty common knowledge now, I believe, that some Nazis escaped to Argentina, right, South America, and there's some ties there with high-level Nazi officials and them setting up colonies or communities in Argentina specifically. But I guess also, though, I've heard that there are some Confederates. There's a rumor, a theory that Confederates also escaped to South America to set up their own little societies and things like that. So maybe there's some tie-ins there, possibly. Like I said, I know literally just that much about it. I don't know a single ounce of information beyond that, but
yeah, it's another one shrouded in mystery, that, but it kind of makes sense. You know what I mean? It's not that far of a stone to throw, is it, really, to think that you're headed south into Mexico and beyond?
No, not at all.
Gazza, have you got anything left on your list?
Literally the two very quick ones. Obviously, Knights Templars, which we haven't really gone down, and that's one of the more famous ones. And particularly what Ryan just said there in terms of where did all of their riches go? Because these guys were lauded around sort of thing. You know what I mean? So Knights Templars again. You could probably do a whole different podcast on them. And then the only other one was the Independent Order of Odd Fellows,
Yeah.
which is like, it's just a cool name. So you picked it up, and I was just doing a bit of reading. It says their purpose, and I'll read it out. It says, visit the sick, relieve the distressed, bury the dead, and educate the orphan.
So it was number
What?
one on my list, and I never said anything.
Really? Wow.
It was.
Tell us a little bit
The
about it.
first
then.
one I have, Oddfellows. So like the Masons, a lot of the old societies were labor guilds, just like Brad said.
Yeah.
Oddfellows were all the leftovers. They are the
Right.
janitors, the garbage men, the people that really didn't have a trade.
Yeah.
So they just came together. Basically all the unwanteds. And
Wow.
one of their, rituals, rites of passage, whatever, is they're faced with the skeleton. Like legit live skeleton. Not nowadays so much. but
Live skeleton.
well, you know what I mean. Real. This isn't a Halloween
That'd
prop.
be some scary shit.
And you're faced with mortality. That's kind of the lesson of
Right.
the ritual. And you have to
Okay.
kiss that skeleton. You're basically kissing death. That's
Wow.
the oath you're taking to the Order of the Oddfellows.
Wow. It's literally just, you do a bit of research and it came up. And I was like, what a cool name. That you start reading, like, no way, sort of thing. That sounds cool. And again, started in America, started in the USA, not the UK. So
Yeah, there you go. Funny story about the Oddfellows. When I was probably, let's say, 7 years old, I played Little League baseball, and all the baseball teams were sponsored by some local business or something, and my team was sponsored by the Independent Order of Oddfellows.
no way.
It was
That's
like,
cool.
the little shirt we had was IOOF, like local,
Yeah.
whatever their lodge number was. Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy,
Brilliant.
isn't it?
You need to get back in touch with them and get them sponsoring the Pubtime podcast.
Right? Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming there was
You
obviously
bring that
a
fucking
local-
skeleton in. We'll talk.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'll
It looks like you
smooch that
got
son of
one
a
in the
bitch.
corner behind
I
you
could
there,
take
bud.
Dick's place.
Oh dear, man.
Oh man.
But going back to that, though, when I said earlier about like different presidents being Freemasons, there's been a number of them been Oddfellows as well, and I do believe, am I right in saying that the Bushes were Oddfellows?
Oh, absolutely. Now, were they a member of the organization? I'm not sure.
Well played.
Yeah, I like it. The only one I had left to mention then is absolutely nothing to do with secret societies per se, but there is a book out there that you can buy by a gentleman by the name of Nick Harding, and he has written a book on how to start your own secret society.
Okay.
Is it does it say do a podcast together with some guys from the other side of the world? Because I think we're onto something.
I think we are.
Yeah.
I
Just
think we
choose
are.
a name. Just get it. Yeah. Don't
Well,
tell anyone about it.
Oddfellows is already taken, so
That's it, yeah.
Yeah. What was the one he talked about? Bald or whatever it was earlier. That's already been
Bald.
taken. Can't do
Bald
that.
knobs.
Yeah. It's just the ball knobs, yeah, that'll do. Yeah, we can knock the burrs off the end, but yeah. So I think that's a really interesting concept. That first of all, that this guy's taking his time to write a book about it. Second of all, what is there other than nobody's going to be interested in joining a cult or a secret society with Tallboy Radio? But what is there to stop us from doing that?
Air and opportunity.
Exactly. You got to find that opportunity and you got to exploit it. And speaking of exploiting opportunities, I'm going to exploit this opportunity now to give a shout out to our sponsors, Ollie's Snacks. So if you want your olives, your nuts, your pretzels, or your chocolate covered pretzels, get along to ollies-ollies.com and use the promo code TallboyRadio if you are based in the UK, and Tallboy Radio is all capitals and all one word, and you will get a 20% discount off your order. And with every order placed on their website, they will donate a school meal to a child in need with the help of One Feeds Two. So, as we said earlier, we always share what beer we've been drinking while we've been discussing our secret societies. I'll be interested to find out from Brad and Ryan first what these guys have been drinking tonight.
Go ahead first, Brad. Yours is boring.
All right. Well, I tell you what, I mean, I always look at, when we get together with you guys, I look at this as an opportunity for me to step outside my box of American domestic beer and sort of expand my horizons a little bit. Now, some of these are American made, but they're definitely different. So I have Victory Sour Monkey, It's a sour ale. It is 9.5%. I started with that one today. Second, I went over to Germany for the, and I'm sure I'm going to mispronounce it. Ryan can probably correct me if it's Polliner.
Yeah.
Oktoberfest. Had one of those.
Nice.
It's coming in at only 6%, which seems a little weak for you guys over in Europe. And then a local favorite here, heralding back to the days of the American Revolution, the old Sam Adams
Cherry wheat.
Yeah.
I tell you what, and it's unique in the fact that it smells. I had my wife try it last night. She's like, it smells much stronger with the cherry than it tastes. The taste is more subtle, but it is absolutely delicious, and it comes in at a lowly 5.3%.
Yes, that sounds mighty fine. Ryan?
I started this journey off with a Boddington's pub ale.
Yeah, good work.
Delicious. Gem. Absolute gem. Love this one. Don't know
I
what
quite
the-
like
let's
the
see.
one
What we
with
got
the,
in
with
here?
was it the white and red can that you've got just to your left there?
That's
That one.
Oh, that's coming in the list.
Oh, yeah, that's a
That's coming in the
beauty.
list. And then I went to a oatmeal stout by Samuel Smith. I think it's only
Nice.
5.5%. And then this probably is one of my favorite. Yes. The old
Yeah.
speckled hen.
Oh, speckled head, beautiful.
Delicious. I think they tax us a little bit over here, but and then right now I'm just finishing up with a harp.
Fair play. Fair play. Gazzy?
Nice.
Some good beers,
So
eh?
yeah, I've got a couple. Basically, quite a sort of standard just Birra Moretti for me, which is about 4.6%. So there was a couple of them, but then the pièce de résistance really, and I love this beer, is it's called Le Chouffe or Le Chouffe, which is a Belgian beer, 8%, and it's an absolute beauty. Absolute beauty. I really, really enjoy that. So yeah, there's a couple of them as well. So well oiled at the moment.
Good work, good work. Well, before I tell you what I'm drinking, I've got to give a quick shout out to the Drinks and Things podcast, who kindly sent us some glasses all the way, I believe, from Canada, dude. So they sent us these glasses, which have got like this spooky alien and ghost kind of theme to it. I believe Gaz is drinking out of one tonight.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so very kind of them to send it to us. And if I'm going to put a beer in it, I picked a beer that I got out of my cupboard just specifically for. I ordered a beer from Brewdog called Tiramisu Tyranny, which I thought sounded absolutely fantastic. Unfortunately, they didn't send it to me. They sent me this one instead, which is the Mail Order Martian, which seemed like the perfect beer to be putting in there. And that is a 7% milkshake IPA. And I got to tell you, dude, I was pretty pleased actually that they sent it to me by accident because it's actually a really good beer.
Nice.
I just wish they'd told me, before, just rather than open up the box and like, what the hell's this? Didn't order this.
So milkshake IPA, so is it a little sweet?
Yeah, I think what they do is they put the lactose sugars in there as well, so it does have a real sweet taste to it. So it's not like drinking milk. It's not the same texture as milk, but it has that real sweet taste to it. And I tell you what, it's, because it's a fruited one as well. So with it being an IPA, it's almost got a mango taste to it as well. And gee whiz, yeah, it's an absolute humdinger of a beer. Yeah, really, really impressed with that one. Brewdog do some good beers. You can get their other stuff in the supermarkets, but search out the other stuff online that they do, and the limited edition ones, especially the ones that they do in conjunction with other breweries. They tend to be the better beers they do.
Well, the Brewdog, obviously, I'm a big fan of their Urban Fog, which is a Brewdog and Mikkeller sort of collaboration, and it comes in about 6.5%. Is it something like that? And that's a beauty. I really enjoy that one as well. But yeah, Brewdog have had a bit of a bad rap with us over the last however minute. I mean, we mention them every bloody episode, so But yeah, they do some decent beers.
Absolutely. So first thing we got to do really before we give our socials and stuff out. Tell us a little about the Pubtime put my teeth back in. The Pubtime podcast and where you can be found and where you can be found on your socials.
Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Spotify. Check us out.
And do so.
It's Pubtime Podcast. Yeah, pretty easy at Pubtime Podcast or Pubtime Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, all the usual places. We're pretty easy to find. Come check it out.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you want to tell us how much you've enjoyed this episode or any other that you may have listened to, drop us an email at mail@tallboyradio.com and head over to tallboyradio.com to see all the kind of stuff that we do. There's all the back episodes there you can listen to, and there's a blog post about every single episode that we've done. And also, you've got our external links about different people who've been on plugin products. So if you're interested in picking up books from Vic Ferrari, or if you want to hear a little bit more about the films of Jason Impey, you can do that there. And you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube at Tallboy Radio, and on Instagram at Tallboy Radio Podcast. So, who wants to say their goodbyes first and leave us with their Jerry Springer's final thoughts?
Well, I'll come in then, I guess.
Yeah, I think the guests should go first.
All right. So no, I really appreciate this episode. It was a lot of fun. These are things that Ryan and I kind of talk about just in general and have for a long time, secret societies, and to get you guys on here and to get a different perspective. And it's funny though, because we all kind of, we had a few oddballs, but a lot of similar ones that we were all thinking about, which is interesting. And it's always a pleasure though, no matter the topic, to get together with you guys, have a couple beers, and shoot the shit a little bit. So I do appreciate the opportunity, and it's been a pleasure.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's been nearly 12 months since we last had you guys on.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been too long.
Yeah.
We'll have to get you in the pub soon. Like Brad said, it's always a good time talking with you guys, regardless what we're talking about. So
yeah, you just say the word and we'll be there. And speaking of that, actually, if you're listening to these American-based podcasts, if you listen to the current episode from the Designated Quizzes, you will hear us take on the Scottish alchemists in a battle of quizzes to see who knows the most about our culinary delights that we have over here in the UK. I'm not going to tell you who won, but we won. But we did the shot anyway because we're gentlemen, and it was absolutely disgusting, wasn't it, Gaza?
Yeah, it wasn't very pleasant at all. I really enjoyed that episode. Having said that, I've massively enjoyed this episode. Love having Brad and Ryan chatting. I actually genuinely can't wait for if we do a conspiracy one, because I think that will be absolutely brilliant. So yeah, thanks very much, guys. Always a pleasure. Always nice to know what sort of drinks you're drinking. Love this episode. It's great when we've got guests on. It's great when we've got guests that we've sort of spoken to before, and we sort of, we understand where we're going and what those guys are about. So yeah, loved it as always. Can't wait till the next time, fellas.
Absolutely. And like guy says on the beers, like on every blog post we do, the first thing that we put on top of there is the beverages consumed in this episode. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to have to listen to this back with a pen and paper there, because there was a hell of a lot of beers there that have been consumed there, especially by you guys. That was a decent list that you got through.
We're just trying to keep up.
Yeah, that's right.
When in Rome.
We're professionals.
Yeah, and it's just a pity Andy couldn't have been here to add to that list. But I have had a message off him tonight to say hello to you guys, but he's come up with some terrible excuses to why he couldn't be here.
Well, and we also have to remember we're about 6 hours ahead of you, so we've still got many hours to go before we got to start thinking about bedtime and work tomorrow morning. So, that I think that probably plays into the beverage disparity.
Yeah, we respect your decisions on that one. Fair play to you guys. And that just about leaves it for me to wrap it up and say thank you very much for listening. We've enjoyed our time in the pub, as we always do, and we look forward to catching up with you at some point, hopefully in the very, very near future. So thanks for listening, guys, and take care.